Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Comics Lair. This panel will celebrate Nightwing in honor of his individual title reaching issue number 100 for the second time. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott. The Comics Lair is sponsored by Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. Warning, if you are not current on the present run of Nightwing, you might want to come back and watch this later because we are going to talk about it because it's, hey, issue number 100. And if you are not current on the Titans TV series or any other media, be aware that we may touch on those. And if you care about having them spoiled, you might want to wait. So with that said, I'd like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves, and tell us when they discovered Dick Grayson. Jenny, will you start?
All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Jenny Swartz-Levine. I'm the Dean of the School of Arts, Education, Humanities, and Social Sciences, and a professor of English and a director of the Writing Center at Lake Erie College in Painesville, Ohio. I've been there since 2008, and I would say probably I first discovered Nightwing probably in one of the Bat titles, as he came along, but I also just recently was reading a lot of old Birds of Prey and saw him popping up there as well. And I've really, enjoyed this, the Tom Taylor, Bruno Redondo run. This has been a lot of fun to read.
Okay. Kristen?
Hi, I'm Kristen Geaman. I teach history at University of Toledo, so also in Ohio. And I first was introduced to Dick Grayson through Batman the Animated Series. I watched it as a kid, and I really liked Robin. I definitely was like, yeah, psychics are awesome. And then I kind of fell out of comics for a while, and then when I was in grad school and I needed something that wasn't academic to read, I got back in to comics, and obviously, but I mean, Dick was already Nightwing by the time he was in, by the time Batman the Animated Series came out, so just kind of went from there.
Yeah. People who view these panels regularly know that I write historical fantasy for Falstaff Books. I also independently publish several subgenres of romance, and with Jeannie Adams, I write the Outcast Station science fiction mystery series. I discovered Dick Grayson when he was Kid Robin still. And one of the great joys of my life at that point in time was when DC was putting out 80-page giants for a quarter. And they would put out a Batman 80-page giant for a quarter, and I could get 4 stories for a quarter. And Dick Grayson was about the age that I was then, and he was brave, and he did cool stuff, and he was awesome. And with romance, there's something called a book boyfriend. And that's a character in a book that you would totally date if he walked out of the pages of the book and became a real person. And that has always been Dick Grayson for me. It's still Dick Grayson for me. And my husband's like, yeah, another Grayson picture, whatever. So, it's just part of the package. But I've never stopped liking Dick Grayson in any of his incarnations. And he's been through so many when you think about it. So what's your favorite phase of Dick's career? Kristen?
This is hard because I like most of them. So I do like him as Kid Robin. I enjoy reading the old comics as well, and I like the 66 series. So basically I like anything that is more fun than gritty. So that means anytime when he is Robin, or the first part of Batman the animated series. I like him in New Teen Titans. I feel like I like all of the versions, except there are some runs that I'm like, yeah, I don't like that one very much. But as I joke with my friends, I will read anything that has Dick Grayson in it. Even if I don't like it, I will still read it and be like, yeah, I didn't really like that, but I'll still read it.
Okay, Jenny?
I kind of like all of the incarnations, well, most of the incarnations as well. I like sort of the early Robin stuff, having gone back and read a lot of the early Batman things. When I was a kid, the Batman 66 series was in syndication, so that was a lot of fun stuff to watch after school. I will say, if we're going to talk about television properties, I'm not so wild about the Titans, television show. I don't think that has done any of them any favors.
Well,
It's
we could talk
varied.
about that right now, actually, because it's
Okay.
on my list of things to talk about
Okay.
since it's come up.
Wait, but Nancy, what's your favorite version?
Yes.
Well, I have a soft spot for the original Robin of the original Teen Titans, the ones who fought Ding Dong Daddy and the Mad Mod, and
Mr. Twister.
Yeah, Mr. Twister. I tend to like whatever it is I liked first. That tends to be it. It's like my Star Trek is always going to be the original series.
Yeah.
They can call it episode 4 if they want, but as far as I'm concerned, it's original Star Wars, and my Stargate will always be SG-1. And so Robin, just on the verge of being a teenager, an early teenager in that series, I'll always have a soft spot for. But my favorite run to go back and read is the Dixon run, because that coincided with Birds of Prey.
Yes.
In the way Dixon, he retconned the relationship between Dick and Barbara, and then the way he and Gail Simone played off of it together. I really liked the dynamic in there, and I really liked the way Dick functioned in there. He was independent. He was in charge. There are just so many, as you say, to choose from. But if I have to pick, I'll pick those two. So why don't we talk about Titans? Jenny, you brought it up, so why don't you start?
Well, at this point, it's kind of a hate watch in some ways. And my husband and I have watched all of it, because at the beginning, I was kind of hoping that it would get better. But that original shocking promo that had the word in it, about his feelings for Batman, I thought, well, this is not the Dick Grayson that I know. This is not the Nightwing. This doesn't work. And there's just so many plot holes in the entire thing. I don't think they've done any favors to good characterization for any of the characters, but particularly Dick. And their version of Barbara Gordon was not my idea of a good time either, but that's another story for another day. But there's so many plot holes. Like, he winds up in prison, and all of a sudden he's out of prison, and we forget that he was supposed to be, like, nothing happened. We just hand waved that away. So I have problems with the Titans series in a whole lot of ways. So,
Kristen, you want to add anything?
It's too gritty. I mean, I think I've said on these before, it's too gritty. It's not, I don't like gritty stuff. It's too Outsiders for me, when Dick was in Outsiders versus when he was in Titans. So yeah, it's not my thing. And my mantra that I tell people is, Titans, when I watch other superhero things or read the comics, if I don't see them saving someone's life, I still assume they did it anyway. But in Titans, if I don't actively see them rescue someone from the burning building, I'm forced to conclude that they just let that person die. Because everyone is just much more murdery.
Yes.
And stuff. And so it's too gritty. It's just too gritty. And so, I watch it. I think the 4th season is better than the other ones, because it makes more sense, but it's still too good.
Yeah, there's more narrative cohesion, and better is, I mean, you don't have to go too far to get better, but it's just, everybody's all about their feelings. And while feelings are important, feelings are good, that's not what I think that they're all supposed to be. It's supposed to be teamwork and coming together and saving the day. And, and that's not what's happening here. It's too much drama and not enough superheroing.
Well, a couple of people on Saturday's panel had problems with it because they said, where's his humor?
Yes.
Where's the Dick Grayson trademark humor? And this character, I mean, I think the actors were pretty much perfectly cast. I think they fit the parts brilliantly, but I agree that they didn't have the best material to work with. I mean, every time they would get the narrative arc rolling, they would introduce a new character and bring everything to a dead stop while they did an origin story. And it's like, you can introduce a character without spending a whole episode on an origin story. Hello. And because I tend to like the first thing I like, to me, even though the actors are great, Superboy is not a Titan. Jason is not a Titan. Hawk and Dove were later additions to the Titans. As far as I'm concerned, they're not Titans. And I thought the actors were all good in their parts. I thought they did what they could with the material they had to work with. And, I loved Alan Ritchson in Smallville when he was playing Aquaman. So, and I liked the actors, but the story was just, Dick is in prison, and I think it was Rachel who says to Donna, we have to do something to help Dick. And she's, he can take care of himself.
Mhm.
It's like, really? My favorite episode of that series, which I actually bought and have on my tablet so I can watch it when I travel, is season 1, episode 8, Donna Troy. Because I thought they nailed the Dick and Donna dynamic. I thought the actors sold it. I loved it. And then it's kind of like they forgot they knew anything about Dick and Donna. So Steve is here, so I'm going to let Steve in and then we'll pick up there. Kristen, did you want to say anything else about the series?
Nah, I feel like let's move on to something more fun.
Okay. Well, I'll give Steve his chance to dish on it and then we'll do that. Let's dip into a little online mini controversy. I spend more time on Twitter than is probably good for me. And so there's this big thing about Wally is Dick's best friend. And then a lot of the Donna fans are like, oh no, Donna's Dick's best friend. And then they go at it. And it's like many people on social media have lost the knack of agreeing to disagree. So in terms of who is Dick Grayson's best friend, who do you vote for? Kristen, you want to start?
I have no idea this was a controversy. And in my head, I was always like, Donna is his female best friend and Wally is his male best friend. And that was that.
Yeah, I would agree with that because, can we not have multiple best friends? How are we defining best friends? Best friends are various points in our life, but yeah, he seems really equally tight with both of them, at least to me. So.
Well, there's a lovely scene. Somebody posted it on Twitter not long ago of, I think it was the anniversary of the death of the Flying Graysons. And it was a new Teen Titans story and Dick was still Robin. And he had gone out to the beach on Titans Tower. He was sitting there by himself with the cape open and the mask off, which is, superheroes taking off their masks around it's a thing for me. It really gives me hives, but okay. And Wally goes out to talk to him and Dick goes, hey, Steve.
Hi.
And Dick goes, leave me alone. And Wally goes, all right. Batman does it a lot better. You need to come inside so we can talk to you. So,
all right. Yeah. If you don't mind me chiming in, since I haven't done so today.
No, what I'd actually like you to do is introduce yourself.
Sure.
And tell us where you first discovered, what stage Dick Grayson was at when you first discovered him, and then we'll pick up with the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm Steve Sellars, and I write a bunch of comics from Omen Comics, and as well as a new venture from Rain Cross Press called Blood World. And as far as my history with Dick Grayson, oh my God, it goes back forever. I do remember him being Robin in the Super Friends. I do remember, I actually owned a Robin figure that was a Mego when I was like 4 or 5. So it's like my history with Dick Grayson goes back a long, long way. I remember Teen Titans off and on. I didn't read the new Teen Titans until later, but I was aware of his transition to Nightwing. But I think I discovered him like when I picked up when I was collecting DC trading cards, like in the early 90s, and I found Nightwing on a card. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is a cool looking character. And then it finds out, oh, it's Dick Grayson. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And that's when I really started to love Dick Grayson, I think completely. That kind of led me into Batman, the animated series, and finding Dick Grayson there, to going into the Nightwing ongoing with Chuck Dixon and, and later writers and like Peter Tomasi and so forth. And then I was pretty much a Dick Grayson fan ever since. But to the point where actually one of my characters does openly acknowledge Dick Grayson as an influence. So, he's always been a part of my life, and I think he'll always will be. Yeah. But as far as the question of like who's his best friend, I would have to agree that there are a lot of people that I think deservedly, deserve like a spot on the list. Certainly, like the core original Teen Titans are up there. I would certainly include Wally West. Probably that's like the person most people would think of today. Roy Harper, I would say, is up there. Donna Troy for sure is up there. So, and then of course, he has his friends in the Bat Family and so forth. But I would say probably, the ones that he seems to be tightest with, I would say, are definitely the Titans, especially the classic ones, the original ones, and then some of the Wolfman Perez Titans as well.
Okay. Jenny, did you want to add anything to what you had said?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Because so where did you fall on the controversy? Was there an online poll on Twitter or anything? Did you vote?
If there was a poll, I didn't see it because, with Twitter, if you don't look at the right time, you don't see things. I enjoy the Wally and Dick adventures, but I think there's a special thing between Dick and Donna, and it reminds me of an issue of, I think it was Justice League. The Titans were having an adventure with the Justice League, and Dick and Bruce had a disagreement, and Dick says to Bruce, "Look, you work together, you're a team, that's great. The Titans are a family, it's different." And to me, that kind of sums it up, because I think Donna's more like a sister to him. And I think Wally is more like his bro buddy, kind of, which is not to say they're not close, because I would agree that they're all close because of what they've been through and done together, which was one reason that I was not happy that the Titans TV show made Aqualad kind of stalkerish and then killed him. It's like, really? That's the best you could do? We were also, Steve, right before you arrived, we were discussing the Titans TV show, which I will tell you none of us are fond of. If you would like to weigh in on that, you're welcome to do so.
Yeah. The thing with the Titans TV show is that it's a very well cast show. I have no problems with any of the main actors that they picked. I love Brendan Thwaites as Nightwing. I think he's great. Unfortunately, the writing has been a problem consistently. And I will say this, it hurts my soul that they picked such a great actress to play Donna Troy with Connor Leslie, and then they just did not use her at all, and then they killed her off. I'm like, what? The thing, they just seem like they only get the bare surface of the characters, and they just completely miss the mark, or they are trying to do this weird, edgy thing with their take on it, at least from what I've seen. And I just feel like, there are genuine attempts, and there are people that understand the material to some extent, and then they just go off and they just completely cause problems, and it's just not what it should be. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and Donna's death at the amusement park at the carnival, Superboy's right there. Why is he not catching the big electrical funky thing? And he has at least some degree of invulnerability, which, anyway, we could do a whole panel on why we don't like that show.
I could also go on about how everybody seems to forget that Superboy has tactile telekinesis, but let's go on.
I went to the Titans panel at Dragon Con last year, and Connor Leslie was on it, and she had short hair. And I was sitting in the audience, partly focusing on what they were talking about, and partly thinking, she's got short hair. That means either she's off the show or they're doing Troya with the Starfield costume. And then the actor who played Jason, I'm blanking, but he said, it would have been really great if you were going to be with us next season. And I think they weren't probably supposed to divulge that because anyway. But I do think that the actors were, as I said earlier, perfectly cast and wasted on the material. Disappointing. So how did you all feel about the Nightwing origin story in the Judas contract, New Teen Titans number 44? And don't feel like you have to cite issue numbers. That's like dates in history class. I looked that one up so that I would know it. Jenny, you want to start?
I'm going to defer on this one to others because it's been a while for me for that one. So I'd like to hear what the others have said.
Kristen?
Super into this question because I even wrote about it for something. My favorite version is the Judas contract version that also ties in with Batman 368 and that sort of thing, where he gives the Robin costume to Jason. Jason has his permission to be Robin. Bruce is like, oh, my son's growing up here. And it's just like a nice coming of age that's bittersweet, but not angsty. So that one is my favorite because I don't like angst that much. And I feel as though every subsequent iteration, 408, 409, 416, and then Nightwing Year One got angstier. And so I like the first one the best.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, from what I recall, the various different versions, I would have to agree with that. And I think some of it is because, Marv definitely, created the rift that created Nightwing, because it was the fact that Bruce had fired him and all of this sort of thing, that led towards, Dick Grayson having to find his own identity apart from being Robin, which was his arc, and he ultimately did that. And, as part of, the definitive Nightwing story and Titan story, probably of all time. So, I can't really argue with that, but it's not just that. It's that Marv understood that even though, there are issues between Bruce and Dick, and there always will be because they're completely different people, and Bruce is a very difficult person to deal with on a good day. But at the same time, he kept in mind, this is a father who loves and respects his son. At the end of the day, despite all other differences. We saw it during the wedding of Donna Troy, that issue later, where Bruce is, has a hard time admitting his feelings, but in the end, it's like, I love you as my son, and I respect you as my son, and and that's never going to change. And I kind of felt like, Marv understood the nuances of that relationship in a way that a lot of subsequent writers really have not. But so I can see like value in different other versions as well, but I just feel like that version kind of hit the emotional notes better.
Well, and Marv's the only one that doesn't fire him. He's not fired in the original. Right. It's not like
I'm misremembering. I'm sorry.
And so I'm like, I don't like when they fire it because it makes Bruce look like even more of a jerk face.
Of a Grayson,
yeah. Well, and it's like it's a more supportive family thing when Dick grows up and seeks change and moves on his own. And then Bruce fires him and then turns around and brings in another kid. And that's like, this makes sense how?
Right.
Yeah. I know.
And it gets to another thing that I really don't like, which is the idea that Bruce sees his Robins as soldiers. This is something that came in with Frank Miller and they just keep bringing in over and over again. I don't think that's how Bruce sees them. He sees them first and foremost as children who has suffered as he has, and he is trying, to help these orphans, by giving them a place. But they're not soldiers in his mind. These are his sons. These are his children, and I think this gets lost a lot.
I think he addresses that when he's talking to Damian in some issue. I can't remember if it's Detective or Batman. About how Damian is his son, and he's talking about the different kids that he's taken in, and it was definitely viewing them as people, not as chess pieces to be moved around the board. I didn't like the whole firing thing, as I said, and also I don't like another thing the Titan show did, which is they divorced the Kryptonian connection. And they did it in the comic book too. I loved it that Dick was inspired by Superman stories of Nightwing and Flamebird, and he became Nightwing as a tribute to Superman, and that reinforces that connection. And they've kind of kicked that to the curb in the comic book, and he was inspired by folk tales his cellmates told him in prison on the Titans TV show.
Right.
And so so what do you, if you all liked that, that's fine. Feel free to say so. I didn't like it. So somebody want to weigh in?
I kind of share your take on that one because when they did that in the television show, I'm like, wait, that's not, it's been a while, but that's not right. And I went back and looked, I'm like, no, really, that really genuinely was not right. So yeah, I like the fact it speaks to Dick's inherent goodness, which is what so many of the various iterations of Nightwing have been, is that and we get to that in the Taylor and Redondo run as well, that's why they choose him, is because of his inherent goodness. And his inherent goodness in a lot of ways is reflected by the fact that he admires Superman so much that that's the reason why he takes on the name. And a lot of these other iterations or other versions of it don't delve into that in the way that I think that they ought to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could tell that it was going to be bad because there was no Superman in it. So as soon as the second season, I have another person that I talked Nightwing with, and we were like, how are they going to get Nightwing in? There's no Superman in this. What's going to be the inspiration? So I already knew it was going to be something that I didn't like. So I feel like when it finally happened, I was like, oh, that's how they did it. So it wasn't as crushing, and because I was like, I know it's going to be wrong and I'm not going to like it. So I was prepared for it.
Yeah, I also want to point out that there's one other figure in his life that made him as good as he is, in addition to Superman, and that's Alfred. Alfred was the good parent in his life who was there when, Bruce, maybe wasn't being the parent that he should have been. And I think that encouragement that Alfred gave him allowed him, to be able to break from Bruce and form his own identity. And he kind of realized that as part of that identity, I'm going to be someone that is more like Superman in terms of his ideals. I'm going to embrace Batman's methods because they work, and because I want to honor my father, but also, I want to embrace these ideals because this is who I am, and I want other people to follow me. And he's a natural leader. That's the other thing too. He has this vision. He knows what he wants. He knows what he's aiming for, and people naturally gravitate to him, partly because he's so charismatic, but also because, he is that good person. And as has been pointed out, he has those ideals and he sticks to them and he doesn't compromise. And sometimes he breaks himself trying, to do the right thing, but that's who he is. And that's, why he's the hero that he is.
I think also his bio parents, because of all the Robins, he has the best bio parents. And even out of Batman's parents, like he has the best parents. And that's one thing that I do like. So generally speaking, I have not liked the retcons where they change up the Nightwing origin. I feel like the first one, they got it right. Well, because my favorite thing is Bruce and Dick, father, son, self, like, oh, it's my jam. So of course I was like, oh, I love this so much. So that one was my favorite. But when he first became Robin, it was all, it was the 40s. And so it's like, hey kid, you're going to be my sidekick. You need an identity. And he's like, oh, Robin Hood's cool. And they're like, yeah, great. And so there's really no depth to it. It just happens. So I have like the retcons where they added in that, oh, this is what my mom called me. That's kind of where I got the name, and emphasizing that these are the circus outfits that we used. I like that because one, I think moms often in the Batman family get pushed to the side. So it's nice that Dick has a special connection with his mom. And also, in all of the various retcons, they still, thankfully, have not made Dick Grayson's parents bad, because the Drakes have become increasingly negligent. Jason's parents, they very quickly became bad. And sometimes Bruce's parents are really crummy in there. Barbara, well, it depends on, again, the version. Is Jim Gordon really her dad? Is he not? Yeah.
Is he Jack the Ripper?
Right. Anyway, which of course, that's another reason why it extra annoys me that they had Bruce fire Dick, because they retconned that this was Dick's nickname from his mom in his family's colors. And then they're like, you know what we should do? We should have Bruce fire him and tie another kid to a chair and give him the identity. What?
Well, there's a panel in some comic book where I think it's Wonder Woman asked Bruce, who's Batman at the time, why did you pull him into this? And Bruce said something like, well, he'd lost his parents, he was hurting, and he needed guidance. He needed to do this. And Wonder Woman says, so he would turn out like you? And Bruce says, no, so he wouldn't. And they
definitely do something with that in Young Justice.
Yeah. They've played with that in different, or dropped it into, not really so much played with it, several times in the last few years. And I certainly prefer that to anytime something goes wrong, Bruce backhands one of his children. That's like, really? Let's don't do that.
We're supposed to like Batman.
I like that. I like Bruce most when he admits that, Dick is the son I want to be, the son that I want to have. He's what I am hoping to achieve. Somebody who can get beyond the issues that I have and be a hero and do what's right. And I just like that. Yeah, he might be hard on him, but it's with the idea of making him a better Nightwing, a better Robin, a better hero. And so, but they just want to make Batman a jerk all the time, and it's one of the reasons why Batman and Superman meetings, aside from the ones written by Mark Waid, tend to annoy me because it's like we're kind of tired of it. We need to see Batman showing a certain amount of humanity from time to time.
Yeah.
Well, it's cheap angst when you do that. It's cheap angst, and that's lazy writing, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Bruce is supposed to be broken, but he's not supposed to be a jerk, and I think that's a line that sometimes it gets pretty fuzzy and it doesn't get followed through pretty cleanly, and we see that affecting a lot of the relationships that he has. So
yeah, well, another pot that churns in fandom every now and again. It hasn't been turning so much since Nightwing became so prominent across the board, but for a while there, people were complaining a lot because it said they take all of Dick's skills, except his acrobatics, and all of his friends, and they give them to other Robins. It's like Roy and Corey went to be with Jason in The Outsiders. Tim is the best detective, unless today we need Damian to be the best Robin, in which case he is. And Dick was hardly mentioned as the best thing except the butt, and just don't even get me started on that. So...
And keep in mind that all throughout Titans, when Marv Wolfman was writing, Dick was consistently referred to as the second greatest detective, and he showed it repeatedly.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I like Tim. I like all the Robins. I think I like Robin as a character. Sidekicks, yeah, but Dick was my first one, so kind of like I like what I like first the most. So that's definitely part of it. But yeah, I think that actually kind of happened in the 90s I do not have as much love, I don't think, for the Chuck Dixon run as you do. I think it started to happen in the 90s. There are definitely some comics where I'm like, they make Dick sound dumb so that they can emphasize that Tim is smart. So I think that's been happening for a long time. But when you have a good writer who's writing all the Robins, they know that they're all smart and they're all good at these things. There's just different
ways they go about it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just different aspects of it. But I also, sometimes I see myself falling into that trap too. I also feel as though most of the fans who are fans of the Robins, on the one hand, we want to be like, my Robin is the best Robin. And on the other hand, we also want to be like, my Robin is the one that Bruce craps on the most. So that we, and it's like, you don't, but I feel like people are always like, Bruce is so mean to this Robin, my Robin. So
I want them all to be cool. I think they all have things that are cool about them. I mean, you don't need to one-up one by having the other one be pushed down. I think they all add something to the Bat mythos. Well, maybe not Duke Thomas, but the others, yeah.
Well, I think it's lazy writing to say this Robin is the best at this and this Robin is the best at that. Show me they're really good at it. Because I don't think anybody walks out of the cave in costume without achieving a certain baseline level of competence in all of it. Uh-huh. And there's an issue, I think it's Dick and Superman, and Dick hacks into a computer. I think it's on a spaceship. And he's able to do it because he's been involved with Corey and he speaks Tamaranian, and that's what the computer code is written in, Tamaranian. And then there's another issue where he's off on an adventure somewhere and he needs to get to the Justice League satellite really quickly. And I think he's talking to Oracle. And so he's running and he calls out the transport code and winks out. And she says, does Batman know you have that code? And he's like, we're going to talk about that later. And little things like that show you the character's skill instead of telling you. Like that issue where they thought Tim had died. There was the big fight and Tim was on the rooftop and they thought Tim had died. That's great. That tells me Tim is brave because he's going to fight to the last. And then when it is the last, he's going to meet it bravely. You don't need to tell me he's brave. Show me on all of them. But it did seem, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, finish your thought.
Well, it just did seem like, I think there's a woman shortage at DC anyway, because you don't, where I come from, you don't get in a relationship with your sibling's ex. You don't. And characters at DC do that all the freaking time because they don't have enough female characters. I'm just waiting for them to youthen Barbara so she can get involved with Damian. And, at that point, my head will explode.
Bad enough that they aged Raven and Gar, but that's another point.
I think, and this also is part of why I wake up. Well, I never did Twitter and I never will. Like, I don't do as much social media. Is I think there are also, it's totally cool for, and I enjoy the jokes and stuff, but also I think, I'll be real, it is one of the things I love about Dick Grayson that his name is Dick, because I have a weird thing for dudes named Richard. It cracks me up. And I was always like glad that they did not try to give him a different nickname because Rick, in a variety of reasons. But I also think there's a lot of hot takes out there for people who don't know a ton about comics. And, he's been involved with Batgirl and with Really Hot Starfire. And there's a number of panels where people are flirting with him. And his name is Dick. So it's very easy to make those kind of jokes. Because I've seen a lot of stuff where people are like, yeah, he's like, so they basically turn him into a him. People on the internet are like, oh yeah, he's a himbo. They're like, he's the hot Robin. And it's like, well, so he's not just hot. I mean,
this is one of my pet peeves as well. So I totally get you. And besides, by the way, one of my other favorite characters is Richard Rider. So I totally get you on that point.
So you're telling me you liked it when he became Rick?
No, the worst. I knew it was going to be bad as soon as it was Rick. I was like, I've never known a good Rick.
Well, I also have an affinity for a historical Richard, and it's not the Lionheart. So I've always liked that name. And, when we were kids, Dick was an ordinary nickname. It didn't it was not, as we might say, fraught with meaning. So there was a period at DC, switching gears a little bit, where, and let's not mention any names as we discuss this, of people at the company, but legacy heroes got kind of parked in a corner. And for a while, the Wally West fans and the Dick Grayson fans were like sharing the bleachers and passing the flask back and forth because things were just so not great.
And if you were me, who was a huge fan of both, it was miserable.
Yeah. And then we could do a whole panel on Heroes in Crisis and Wally. So now Dick is freaking everywhere. I mean, he's everywhere. And he's going to be the new leader of the super team, which looks like it might be the Titans, while the Justice League is on hiatus. Mm-hmm. So for a while there was a debate about who was the quote unquote fourth pillar of the DC universe. Do you think, yes or no, and why, that DC is building up Dick to see if he sort of takes as the fourth pillar? Steve, you want to start?
I think they could be. Now, I definitely think they were trying to push Harley Quinn as the fourth pillar just because of popularity and all of this. I never felt that made much sense. I just don't feel like, she is as important historically. I don't think that she is, as... I don't want to say as enduring of a character, but, I don't feel like she supports what the DC universe is in the way that a Superman or a Batman does. Nightwing, however, crosses a lot of boundaries, and it's not just, that he's part of the Bat family. He's the leader of the Titans. He has all these connections with all these major heroes in some way. In fact, you might also say that one of his superpowers is being able to get just about any hero of the DC universe to team up with him. He just has that sort of feeling when you really kind of look at it. And it may be that they are trying to build him up as the fourth pillar. Maybe it'll take, maybe it won't. I mean, it has to flow organically. This is not one of those things that you can, force with, advertisements and, event comics and things like that. The fans have to agree with that and hold on to that. So we'll see if they do or not. Me personally, I definitely think that he should be, but, it's not really up to me in the end of the day either. It really is up to, the people who are reading and buying the comics. But I feel like as a character, he has the potential to be that if DC does it right. And that's going to be another important factor. Are they building him in a way that is organic? Are they building him in a way that tells a good story with him? That takes him in a new direction, that makes people think about him in a different way, while also respecting where he came from and who he is. All of these things matter. And so while I'm sympathetic to that goal, I would like to see it happen. We'll see, and it's going to depend on how good DC is in implementing it.
Okay, Kristen?
I have no idea. I do not understand how DC works. I will not even pretend that I can understand it. I have no idea what's going on. It would be great. But yeah, I don't know. It could happen. I mean, the name Dick Grayson is out there because even people who, because of the 66 show, I mean, people know the name. I don't know. A part of me is like, yay, but another part of me is like, but if he becomes such a big name, it means they'll make a movie and it will be terrible because that's kind of how they go. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And Jenny?
It seems to me, especially having just, recently read through the Tom Taylor and the Bruno Redondo run, if particularly in issue 100, I think that's where they're headed. Because, I mean, if you look at some of it, it kind of alternates back and forth between, Batman talking to him about sort of his strength of character and his abilities. And then, Superman and Wonder Woman talk to him about that. And they're very much trying to hand off that mantle. We have the scene where the Hall of Justice is destroyed. And it's this whole, we're handing it to you now because the Justice League has disbanded. And it's sort of that closing bit is with the Titans. And there's so much of that issue that also has Dick working with the Titans to, defeat the bad guys. And I think that's really where they're trying to head. But I also think my husband told me that he just heard that like the television show has been, I think this the fourth season that this is it. So I wonder where they're headed with that as far as across other media, the property in different media. But I think if just reading this bit that, and especially since they're launching the Titans and having the Justice League go away for a while, it does seem as though that's where this is headed.
There's a panel, it's been reprinted a lot as a flashback, where Bruce and Dick, when Dick is still a fairly young Robin, have an adventure with the Justice League. Uh-huh. And Bruce tells him, I brought you because I want you to see that I have no meta powers and I can stand beside these people. And if I can, you can too. And Dick says, does that mean I'm going to be in the Justice League someday? And Bruce says, no, you're not going to be in the Justice League. You're going to lead it. And what's happening now seems like a callback to that from years ago. I've seen it reprinted so many times, I don't remember where it originated. But Harley has a huge number of fans, and that's great, and that's fine. But when they were trying to push her, it was kind of like, are you really trying to tell me that Harley Quinn is faster than Wonder Woman and Superman? Really? No. But Dick is connected. He's the most connected character in the DC universe, and they make a big deal about that every now and again. He's the character everybody trusts. So I don't personally feel that it's very important that the DC universe have a fourth pillar. But if it's going to have a fourth pillar, I would like to see it be Dick. And so while we're talking about things that sometimes produce a little controversy, Team Corey, Team Babs, or Team somebody else altogether. Jenny, you want to start?
I'm Team Barbara all the way. That's one of the things I like about the most recent run is that, they're together and they've got Haley, they've got, it's delightful. I mean, the other pairings have been great. It's been lovely. The one thing I was sad to see happen was when he broke up with B in sort of the run up to this, because her I liked quite a lot. I saw why it happened. I'm like, all right, we're ramping up to get back to him and Barbara. So I'm definitely Team Babs.
Kristen?
Yes, I like Barbara better. Barbara's, has a PhD and is a nerdy person and stuff. So I enjoy Barbara as a character better. So I like that. Also, I do, like I was saying earlier, Bruce and Dick, father-son, is my jam. So I like Dick in the Bat family more. I like that father-son dynamic. So I feel like it's better for him to be with Barbara because he can be with Barbara and it won't be weird. Like, is Dick Grayson Nightwing? Because he's also married to Starfire, and so is Nightwing. So I like that. So I prefer that, and I do really enjoy this because one thing I've always felt, though, is I like him with Barbara better, but I always thought that Dick and Corey was better written. I thought Dick and Corey in New Teen Titans was better written than Dick and Barbara in the 90s and early 2000s. I felt like that was too angsty, and too many writers had them. They have like one heartwarming issue like Birds of Prey 8, and then you have another issue where Dick like won't let Barbara get her own spices out of the cabinet or something. And I was like, these two don't go together. So yes. So that's like a classic yes and no historian answer, but it is yes, Barbara, but I thought Corey was better written in the past, but now Barbara's catching up.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I will say I kind of respect and understand why people like the Dick Corey relationship. So what I'm going to say, when I say what I'm about to say, it is not with the intent of diminishing that at all, because, as Kristen said, it was very well written. I can completely understand, all those years of Marv telling these great stories with Dick and Corey, showing why they were together. And it just never really clicked for me personally. Like, I don't know. There's just something about them that to me does not quite click. I think it makes sense for Dick at that time. And I think that he learned some important lessons about life and relationships that he took later on. So I completely understand, why people latch onto this. And not to mention that, you can't really like divorce Dick from Marv Wolfman anyway. And Corey is a big part of that whole time in his life. So I can't really step away from that. That having been said, I prefer Dick with Barbara. And I will make a caveat, like I normally do, that this is Barbara before they started de-aging her and making her act like a 19-year-old.
That's true. I do prefer with Oracle Barbara.
Yeah, Oracle Barbara. Yeah. And a lot of it is just because I kind of feel like at that point, both of them had kind of grown into their own different phases in life, and they had grown together over time. It could have been better written, I agree. But at the same time, I just feel like the characters really spark. I feel like they have a lot in common. I think they have a lot that they give to each other, and they grow together. And I really prefer that. If they continue to write them well again and just, keep that consistently growing, I don't see any reason why you can't have, even a wedding arc and then just continue with there. I mean, look at Wally and Linda. It didn't hurt them, not at all. So I'm my hope is that, we're not going to see another case of Barbara getting yanked away just for more angst and because they have to do a new direction with Dick. And so, I would like to see him grow consistently the way that Wally West has.
We know a lot of fans prefer Dick and Corey because they don't like Dick being with the Bat family. They don't feel that Dick gets handled well in Bat family stories. I loved what Marv Wolfman did with Dick and Corey. I love that story. It was so romantic and it was so important really for the character growth of both characters, but particularly for Dick. But, going back to that, I like what I liked first. I found Barbara a long time before I found Corey, because Barbara was around for a long time before Corey appeared. And I always thought there was something sweet about, okay, this kid's got this crush on this older woman, and that's all it can be is a crush, because when the age difference is 15 and 23, that's not going
that's
there.
No good.
But when you get to the point where the age difference is 20 or 21 or 22 and 29 or 30, well, then it's not so unreasonable, especially with somebody like Dick who grew up fast. And so I sort of liked the idea that he had this crush on her, and then she kind of, because that was the right thing to do. And then as he got older and he got past the irrational thing of the crush, and he got old enough that they could actually become emotionally closer and relate to each other better, that it turned into something. I mean, the Convergence has the Dick Babs Thanagarian story, and I love that story, written by Gail Simone. And then they have Titans on Another Planet, where Dick and Corey are clearly together. And I love that story too. It's just that I like Dick and Barbara a little bit better than I like Dick and Corey. And I really wish people didn't feel like, I like this one, so I have to trash that one in the hope that DC will believe me and do what I want. I mean, why can't we just like both of them? And
I mean, we have infinite verses, so obviously somewhere he's with Corey, somewhere he's with Barbara, somewhere he's with whoever else you want it to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I acknowledge Kingdom Come where he has a child with Corey, and I acknowledge the Convergence thing where he ends up with Barbara. And there's nothing wrong with either of them, and there's nothing wrong with preferring either of them.
right. Before we move on from Dick's romantic life, what do you all think about Nightwing Annual number 2 with the retcon of infidelity? I see Kristen's face is already twisting. You want to start, Kristen?
It's terrible. That was one thing that also kind of that was another thing that bothered me about Nightwing Year 1 was because it came out and it was a retcon and it was after they had put Dick with Barbara. I thought that they really disrespected his relationship with Corey. Obviously I said it was well written, and I think I know he's not real, but in the sort of arc of his character, it's important that he had that relationship with Corey because it helps him be less Batman and it helps him be a better partner to other people, to be more open. So I didn't like how they kind of were like, oh, the Spice Girl, and kind of trashed on Corey and had them almost be cheating in that one. And yeah, I thought it was ridiculous that he would cheat in that one. I dislike when they try to push them together too much and make it as though they've always been destined for each other and Corey was just a mistake or something. And I think they started to do that when they tried to make Barbara younger. And yeah, it's wretched.
Steve, you want to follow that?
Yeah, I have to say that I would say that I regret that I haven't read it, but no, I really don't. Everything that I've seen from it, I've seen a number of posts of panels from it, and everything that I've seen from it about how he basically slept with her and didn't tell her that he was going to marry Corey and all of this. That's nonsense. There is no way that he would do that to her. He wouldn't do that to anyone, but he would especially not do that to Barbara. No way. Not in a million years. This is hated. This story is hated among Nightwing fans, and from everything that I have seen, it seems justifiably so.
Okay, Jenny, want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think it's all been said. I mean, because it's not just the issue of the infidelity; it's not who he is, and I think it violates the core tenets of who he is as a character, of someone who is honest and decent, no matter what the cost happens to be. So it's asking him to act in contradiction to who he is.
Well, I think it gets brandished a lot by newer Nightwing fans or newer comics fans, really, who are seizing on this one example, which goes counter to Dick's entire romantic history through all the years and all the decades and all the issues. And they say, see, he's a player. It's like, no, that would be one episode against thousands, and no. But I think a lot of people, when they come into fandom, I don't think it matters how you come into fandom, whether you come in because you like a TV series, you happen to pick up a comic book and you love it, somebody told you about it, you watched a movie. It doesn't matter. But I do think when you are new to a fandom, any fandom of any kind, you really shouldn't tell people who've been in it a lot longer than you have that they're wrong, unless you have gone back and read everything, which most people don't do. And, you look at 80 some years with Dick Grayson, people don't have time to do that. But
untrue.
Well, I just wanted to bring that up. And then I thought we would look at the current run. So what do you think about the current run? Steve, you want to start?
Yeah, now I will say I am not completely caught up, so I'm going to go off of what I read, which is a fair chunk of it. I will say that compared to the Rick Grayson run, this run has been excellent. I love Bruce Redondo's art. I will say he has a really great look for Dick Grayson. I think he's up there pretty close to Travis Moore and people like that in terms of how well they visually get it. The writing, as for Taylor himself, I think my thing with Taylor is he tends to be very hit and miss. Sometimes he can be, do really, really great stuff. People tend to point to his out of continuity stories, but I definitely have seen things even in his regular mainstream runs where he'll start off having a couple of really good issues and then, he'll dip after that. I don't think it's been quite that dramatic here. I think it's been a little more consistent, but at the same time, there are just sort of moments where you're wondering, really, but compared to what came with Rick and all of this, I'm just like, you know what, I'll take what we can get for now. I like the whole idea of him exploring his relationship with Alfred and being the inheritor of his money, especially around that time when Bruce didn't have any money. So it's interesting, seeing Dick Grayson be the one, who is doing all the charitable giving and things like that. What would he do, with that kind of a fortune? And I think that's really interesting. I'm kind of like wondering why they're retconning his past, throwing in the kind of sister, but I'm just like, no. But I will say I like that that various characters from his past have come back. I like that Blockbuster again is the threat that he was before. I did like briefly him taking on KG Beast, sort of those sorts of things. But it's just like sometimes he does come across as a little not as smart as he should be. And sometimes there are things where it is a little mimetic. But I will say that compared to a lot of what we've seen in the past few years, even a solid, not legendary run is still a lot better than I was expecting. And so on that basis, I would say it's fine. It's fine. I dig it.
Okay. Jenny?
Well, I unabashedly love it. So I'm a bit warmer on it than it's fine. I think the writing's been very good. When the thing opens up and you've got, three-legged, pit bull, sort of scampering through the streets and then gets adopted. That warms my animal lover heart right there.
Yeah, I love the dog.
Yeah. Haley's just terrific. And I love the writing so far. I think it's been great about kind of getting us back on the path of getting to the essence of who Dick really fundamentally is, that he's a good man, that he's the one that's the right one to wind up with Alfred's money because he's a good man and is going to find ways to use it to do good and to help homeless children. And, he's still defeating bad guys and all of that other stuff, but it's fundamental. The philanthropy is fundamental to who he is. And the art has been terrific. I think that this, more than some of the other things in a while, really gets to that acrobatic nature. I love how we see all of the panels where he's kind of like moving and flipping through the panels. And I can't remember what the issue is when Haley's been dog-napped, and that if you took all of the panels and assembled them, that it would be of the poster. That's just brilliant. I love the art in this. It's just been fantastic.
Okay, Kristen?
So I also love it. I know, Nancy, you told me before some of your things, and I do understand it. Maybe they're bringing his friends in, so sometimes he doesn't look as confident or whatever. But I love it because it's totally my jam. This is what I want out of comics because it's happy. It's not angsty. And I do think Tom and Taylor and Bruno Redondo generally get to Grayson. I really enjoyed that interview they had a couple months ago where they specifically said he's not a player. He's most of that stuff that people think he's a player are actually other people flirting with him because he's just a handsome guy that people like. And I was like, yes, that's true. So I like that. I think they get it. And of course, there's been a lot of family stuff and his friends. And so even though sometimes those people came in and helped him out and maybe it's made him seem less competent, I like that better because I love him interacting with his friends. It's weird. I more read superhero stories for, the time. I'm totally into Wayne Family Adventures kind of stuff where they're being a family and doing that kind of stuff. And then I'm like, oh, and this is the page where they punch people. Cool. So I know it has its problems, but this is definitely the kind of thing I love. And I love Nightwing 100 so much because it had 2 hugs in it. Bruce and Dick, and it's like, I'm so proud of you, son. And he's hugged him and said, I love you, Dad. And I was like, I love it so much. So it made me very happy.
Well, I like it more than I don't like it. My problems with it are, if you know there's somebody in your apartment, are you really going to dive through the window when you don't know who it is? And then Barbara flips you. And then if you know there's somebody out there to kid you, why don't you call in the Titans? Why is it Barbara who's calling in the Titans? So there are things like that bother me about it. And part of what bothers me about it is not Tom Taylor's fault in any way, because it's common across the DC universe, the comics universe anyway. We met Heartless in the first issue of this run. Heartless is still freaking out there. And the pace of the actual main narrative arc, or at least what we're being told is the main narrative arc, is so slow. And that is a problem in so many DC books. I watched the memorial panel for Denny O'Neil that they did at DragonCon. I watched it online, and several people talked about their experiences working with Denny and things that they had learned from him. And one of the writers, I don't remember who it was, said one of the things he had learned from Denny was that there needed to be something on every page that moved the main story forward. That's not true anymore at DC. Sometimes there's one thing in the issue that runs the story forward. I dropped Batman after the issue that was all Batman chasing the Joker through Gotham City, and at the end of it, the Joker says, beep, beep. I paid $5 for a Roadrunner joke. I don't think so, thank you. And so it bothers me that we still haven't done anything about Heartless, that he's still out there kind of running around. I loved issue 100. I liked it better because Dick called in the Titans, and Dick was directing everything, and Dick was in charge of everything. And so that's been my main quibble with the storylines, is that it's great that the Titans come in to watch Dick's back when Blockbuster's hired hit people, but it should be Dick calling them, not Barbara. And if you know there's an intruder in your apartment and you don't know who it is, please don't dive through the window. Do a little recon before you do that. But otherwise, I've enjoyed a lot of things about it. And I saw, again on Twitter, some comic book shop had taken that Haley kidnapping issue and laid it out flat and framed it and displayed it in their shop. And it looked amazing the way they had done that. We've been going for an hour. I have a few other things that we could cover. If anybody needs to leave, you're free to do that. But if you would like to stick around, we can keep going for a little while.
Sounds good.
Okay, I don't see anybody leaving, so we'll keep going.
Yeah, I came in late, so I kind of feel like I should stay a bit longer.
Okay, always happy to have you all. So this has come up a couple of times, and it's kind of like the slightly smelly elephant in the room, and that's Rick Grayson. So I have a feeling that we're pretty much at consensus about Rick Grayson, but let's discuss it anyway. What did you like or dislike about it? Jenny, will you start?
I disliked that we did it. My husband described it, I think, pretty aptly when he said it was a terrible idea that was well executed, particularly when Dan Jurgens came on the book. So I think Tim's right about that. I guess the things that are good about it is that he has the opportunity to rediscover who he is and have it be a choice rather than something that he's thrust into because he's been adopted as a child who's, as a traumatized child. But I didn't dig it. I thought it didn't work. I think it was supposed to illustrate that even when he doesn't really fundamentally know who he is, although he does because he's been told this. I mean, we know this right from the get-go, that he knows that he was Nightwing, that he knows that he was Dick, that he knows all of these things, even though he can't remember them, that he's still fundamentally the core of who he is, even if he's, but the whole breaking into, apartments to sleep in them. And that
was a head scratcher for sure.
Yeah. And the whole drinking more than he normally does. I mean, I didn't care for it. I mean, I liked Bee. She was great. And then she got her heart broken at the end. Poor Bee. But yeah, I wasn't a fan.
Okay. Kristen?
So yeah, my main thing is it went on way too long. It's a similar problem too. And yeah, it does. I'm with my other friend, we always, every week, we read some older comics. And it takes me at least twice as long to read a new Teen Titans comic as it does to read a modern comic, because there's so many more words and panels and stuff on the page. So yeah, one thing, the Rick Grayson thing went on way too long. If it had been like 3 issues, maybe I could give them 6. That would have been okay. And also, my friend got us to talk to Dan, and it really does sound like DC had no idea what they were doing with it, and it didn't make any sense until Dan Jurgens came on and was like, we should connect this to the Court of Owls. So partway through, it started to make sense. So once he did that, I was like, oh. So if they had done that from the start and made it shorter, I think it would not have been, we would all not hate it as much.
Steve?
Oh man, where do I even begin with how terrible Rick Grayson is? This really made me stop reading Nightwing for years. It really did. I was that angry when it happened. And it's because, not just because what they did to Dick Grayson, and Dick Grayson is my favorite DC character. It's because this is one of the pillars that broke Rebirth, along with the Batcat wedding being nuked, along with Heroes in Crisis. And yeah, I know we weren't going to talk about, names and who was responsible, but I think we all know who was responsible. So I'm not even going to get into that. But the problem really is that they decided that they were going to deconstruct Dick Grayson, and that is not who Dick Grayson is. It is not an approach that works with Dick Grayson. That he is a bright, shiny character. He is a character that might have been born from a certain amount of darkness, but his whole point is that unlike Batman, unlike Bruce Wayne, he has chosen to a better path, because he does not want to be like Bruce. And, when you decide, okay, we're going to go and put a gun to his head, and then he's going to be this, this sour character who is no fun at all to watch. I just feel like it definitely is a move that it comes across as disrespecting him, but I think it's more that they don't understand that. Because if you understand the character of Rick Grayson, you don't do this. And so the first whole part of it, that really got me. But like was brought up, Dan Jurgens came in, a guy who does understand Dick Grayson, a guy who does understand the typical DC universe and what makes it work. I mean, this guy did some great runs on Superman. So, his credentials are impeccable in that respect. So then he comes in and then he says, okay, let's connect it to the Court of Owls. Let's show Dick Grayson gradually regaining himself, trying to pick the pieces up and trying to essentially find out who he is and what he wants to be. And I'm like, okay, that is an arc that could be interesting. I think it dragged out a little long, but I think that that the redemption arc worked. And I will say that there are 2 things that came about it that I did and ultimately enjoy. 3. One is the idea of the Nightwings that are going around, trying to operate in Nightwing's place. That was interesting. The idea of these people trying to fill that role because Nightwing was no longer there, or at least no longer there the way that we understood that. I thought that was interesting. There are places where that could have gone, and I feel like Jurgens did the best he could with that. 2 is it established KG Beast as a major Nightwing opponent. That I think is probably the biggest thing. KG Beast has never been a character who has really amounted to that much in a long time, despite having started off on a really strong note. And I think the fact that KG Beast being the guy, who did this to Dick Grayson, I think cements him as a regular Rogues Gallery member for Nightwing. And I like that. And that comes up every single time he comes back. The last issue which unfortunately had him leaving B, which I didn't like either, at least had that moment where Nightwing gets up on KG Beast and proving at least to himself, that he was himself again, that he had found who he was and had grown stronger for what KG Beast did to him. And I like that thing. And then Tom Taylor went and brought him back a little later, and I dug that. So that's the one, I think, long-term good thing is that KG Beast finally has an opponent that is finally kind of built up to a point where he has his own hero now, who is that he's connected to in a deep way, and I like that. And V. I mean, she was a good character. I hated that that it ended the way that it ended. And I will say part of my problem with that is that unfortunately Jurgens fell into the Spider-Man trap a little bit because he was a writer on Spider-Man, and he seemed to have this idea that, you know, you have to sacrifice, you know, your love life to be a hero, which I completely disagree with. But at least it set up Dick to be free to go off with Babs. So, I mean, I just didn't like the way it was done. But I will say that I did like the character of B when she was with Dick at that time. So those are about the only things that I think are redeemable. Everything else was just an exercise in deconstruction and everything that is bad about comics, and particularly about DC Comics in recent years. And it has been it's been sent to the dustbin of history where it belongs.
We know for a long time I had a screenshot on my tablet of the original solicitation for Nightwing 51, which would have been written by Benjamin Percy, and it would have had Tim going to Bloodhaven to take care of Dick and help him, because a traumatic brain injury affects motor skills. And then Barbara would be there, and there was going to be a little bit of a love triangle. And then somehow that got ditched. And in the first place, this is a universe that includes Raven and Zatanna. What do you mean you can't fix him? In the second place, where were the Titans? Where was everybody else? Not even coming to check on him, not even coming to observe him Batman did in one panel, not even coming to see what's going on with him. And I can get him thinking it's crazy to dress up in an outfit and run around the rooftops. But then he's dressing up in an outfit and running around the rooftops and putting motor grease on his face, which I've worn theatrical makeup. It doesn't come off with one wipe, and motor oil and grease certainly won't. But, he's fine. He just wipes it right off and goes on with his business. And I really liked B too. And I thought it was a wasted opportunity that they didn't have B say, okay, look, you're saying this, but you're doing that. I mean, what's the deal here? And that would have been a real exploration of the character had somebody forced him to confront the inconsistency in his actions. I thought the cops and the firefighter as Nightwing were fine. I would have liked them better had I not been so consistently disgusted with Rick. I read the first 2 issues of that storyline, and when it became obvious it was going to go on for a while, I dropped it. And what I heard through the grapevine was that a lot of longtime readers dropped it. Some new readers picked it up, and then eventually they dropped it too. And I thought the whole business, as Jenny mentioned, about breaking into people's houses, you're invading people's personal space. It doesn't matter if you leave money to make up for the food that you eat. And to say, well, it's my circus roots, I move around a lot. That's a slap in the face to everybody who lives in a circus.
Yes.
Yeah, circus people move around. They don't break and enter and steal. I mean, it just
they tried to make it too gritty.
Too gritty and too angsty and too... I actually did some research. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't have a background in that, but I did a little internet research on traumatic brain injury because I was so distressed by the things that they had Dick doing. And yeah, it can cause a personality change and it can cause changes in behavior. But I wanted to know, why do you think it's okay for you to do these things? Why is this an all right thing to do in a way that does not insult circus people? Why do you think ethically that this is okay? Because you changed because you had a traumatic brain injury, fine. But what's the reasoning that follows from that? And we never got that. And I thought Dan Jurgens did about the best anybody could have done with backfilling motivations and explanations and trying to tie this whole mess together. But it was a bunch of different writers on different issues. And so you didn't have one writer for a long time. There was like a plot, and then different writers wrote the scripts. And you didn't have one writer overseeing a through line in it. And at one point, they established years ago that Bloodhaven's about 20 minutes from Gotham. It's far enough away that Dick has his own space, close enough that there's interaction with the Bat family. Barbara flew to Bloodhaven to see Rick, and she needs a ride to the airport to go back to Gotham. Okay.
She could just take her bike.
Yeah. So I was really glad to see that over with. I think it actually could have been interesting and positive. but they just didn't take it that way. If it was an opportunity to show how connected Dick was, how strong his moral drive is, how much people care about him. And instead, he was just a jerk to almost everybody. And it's like, no.
Yeah, I think it could have been cool if they brought the Bat family in more and it was like, oh, because they always talk about, not just the center, but in other comics, Bruce has said on more than one occasion, there's multiple panels that Dick is the heart of our Bat family and kind of what keeps us together. I think they could have, if they had planned it, I just don't think they planned it at all. And I think it was just like everybody was slapping stuff together. And so if they had, it would have made sense for it to be the Court of Owls from the start, because then you could have done anything. It wouldn't have to make sense as a traumatic brain injury, because it's actually not. It's them manipulating his brain. So that could have been a signal that the Bat family was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And you could have seen how they were kind of falling apart without him there. And I feel like it had potential if they had planned it ahead of time, and they didn't, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
It needed to be an arc. It needed to be an arc where, Rick, where Dick, loses himself and then finds himself again. And it should have been consistent. The only time we see an arc like that is the minute that Jurgens shows up and has to tie up all these things that made no sense because, they just wanted to do something radically different for the sake of being different. And they had no plan behind it. The only time we start seeing anything is when Jurgens is trying to fix the mess that had already been created. And he did the best that anybody could have done with that.
Yeah, Jenny, did you want to add something?
And I think part of the reason for the mess, because didn't Percy leave the book? Like, didn't he walk away from it? So I'm wondering if there was the plan.
No, it
and
wasn't.
then they had to scramble.
I think that they did something that Percy did not want to do, and he walked.
Yes,
and that's the other reason why I have a problem with this as well, because I wanted to see what Percy was doing.
Yeah,
it seemed like he had some interesting things going on.
Vertigo?
Yeah,
I thought wasn't the original that he was going to get vertigo?
Yes.
And then they got rid of that, and I think that's when the guy walked.
Well, let's talk about Dick's other non-superhero persona, Agent 37. So, Kristen, do you want to start? Did you read Agent 37? Do you have any thoughts on it?
I did. So I like it because it has Dick Grayson in it. It's not my favorite thing. There are some things that I liked a lot of the other characters. It had a lot of jokes, and so that was funny. But I will admit I'm not a huge spy person. So I feel as though there was actually a lot of stuff in the comic that I didn't appreciate to the fullest extent, because I was like, I think that's a spy thing. But I didn't really know. I mean, I like Nightwing better, but I enjoyed it, and it definitely didn't turn out as bad as I thought it was going to turn out. I was super worried when the first thing was him with the gun. But I did like that he would throw the gun at people instead of using the gun. So I actually think they did a reasonably good job of having him be him, but as a spy. But it's not my most favorite.
Okay, Jenny?
I got to admit, I tapped out for that one. I do enjoy spy stuff quite a bit, but I just didn't think I could live through Dick as a spy, because to me that's not who he is. So I thought, well, maybe we'll pick that one back up sometime, and that time just has not yet happened. So,
Steve?
Most of what I know about it really comes from Seeley's Nightwing, where I kind of feel like it was handled better. I didn't read a whole lot of the Spiral stuff, and I will say it just came across to me as, gee, James Bond is a charming, handsome guy who goes in and does spy stuff. Let's have Dick Grayson do the same thing, because he's a charming, handsome guy. And I'm just like, no, it really doesn't work. And no. I do find it interesting as a backstory element when he's Nightwing. That, for a little while, he was forced into doing spy stuff. And, he has connections with Spiral and these other spy things. And, he fights international criminal organizations from time to time. I think that is, as a background element, is interesting. I just didn't want to see an ongoing long-term storyline about him being James Bond. That's not Dick Grayson to me.
Yeah.
Well, and I didn't like we're going to tell everybody that you're actually dead because nobody in the Bat fam can keep a secret. And then as somebody on the Saturday panel pointed out, and it's sort of what you all have been saying too, which is you could have taken anybody and put them in that part. There's not really anything that Dick was uniquely suited to be Agent 37 or in Spiral or anything like that. And I like spy stuff. I loved The Man from U.N.C.L.E., even in reruns where the special effects were a little cheesy. I still like it. But it's not what I read Nightwing for. And I wasn't reading it because I thought, Dick is a spy. I don't think so. And a friend of mine told me she was really enjoying it. And so I thought, well, I'll take a look at it. And I enjoyed it as a spy story. And I enjoyed it as Dick making additional connections. But I was really glad to see us go back to Nightwing. So is there anything that anybody wants to talk about that we have not already touched on? No? All right. Well, then let's go around. Please tell people where they can find you on social media. If you have a recent or an upcoming project that you would like to mention, or a project that ties in with this, even with Dick Grayson, even if it's not, the most recent thing, please share that with us. And Steve, do you want to start?
I will say that you can find me at Shadewing on Twitter. I also do the at Revelation Comic Twitter for Revelation Comics, which is where I do my own creator-owned comics, as well as those by Mike Nunnally, who's also been a panelist at various times. And but I think the most recent thing that I want to talk about is Blood World, which is a sci-fi anthology comic that we've done with Mike Nunnally, with David Nemesis Howard and Jeff Bracey and David DeHalo II, who are like my usual partners in crime on various podcasts I do. And this is actually going to be pretty good. The Kickstarter for this, I think, goes live this week. I think it might already be up. So definitely check that out if you can. We put a lot of thought and a lot of heart and soul into this one, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it all shapes up.
Okay. This will go up probably about 2 weeks after it's recorded. So what's the end date on that Kickstarter?
I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say it's next month as of this recording, but I can't be 100% sure.
Okay. Kristen?
I don't know. You can't really find me on social media. I mean, I have a Facebook, but so I guess the only thing I came prepared this time. If you like Dick Grayson, you should check out this book that I edited from. It's getting a long time ago now, when he was only 75, a mere baby. But Dick Grayson, Boy Wonder, available where all books are sold. Well, maybe not all. You can get it on Amazon.
Jenny?
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Jennifer Swartz2. I'm also on Facebook at Jennifer Swartz-Levine. Over on the Fire and Water Podcast Network, I was recently on the Justice League International Bwahaha podcast, and also on the that was episode 46, and on the For All Mankind podcast, which was episode 28. And then also over on the Batman universe, I was on the Batgirl to Oracle, a Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 224.
Okay. You can find me here at ConTinual, the convention that never sleeps. For information about my individual work, you can visit nancynorthcott.com. I spend more time on Twitter, as you may have gathered from watching this panel, than is probably good for me. And there I'm at Nancy Northcott. I have a Facebook author page, but I tend to forget it exists because Facebook changed everything and now I don't understand it. So the page is there, but not much happens on it. So Twitter is probably the best way to connect with me on social media. My upcoming release is Love and Valentines at Canham Castle. And my story is The One Who Got Away, which you might gather is a second chance at love story. And then I'm releasing the next book in my Light Mage Wars Paranormal Action Adventure Romances, Warrior Mage, in the middle of February. So thank you to everybody who participated in the panel. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who has been watching, and thank you to our sponsors, Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. For more information, visit heroesonline.com.